Boardroom fell silent as Richard Ashford slammed his fist on the mahogany table. 35 years old, Henry. Unmarried. The press is calling you a playboy, and our stock is bleeding because investors think you're not serious about this company's future. Henry Cross leaned back in his leather chair, his jaw tight. Around the table, 8 board members stared at him like vultures circling prey. Richard, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, held the room with the kind of authority that came from owning 35% of Titan Holdings. I built this company from the ground up, Henry said, his voice low and controlled. My personal life is irrelevant. Your personal life is the company, Richard shot back. He stood buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. Which is why the board has a solution. You will marry my daughter Victoria by the end of this month. 30 days, Henry. That's what you have. Henry's hands clenched under the table. And if I refuse, Richard smiled, cold and calculated, then we vote you out. I have the shares to make it happen, and you know it. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Richard's word was law here, and they all knew it. Henry stood slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across the table. I'll think about it. You have 24 hours, Richard said, already gathering his papers. Victoria is expecting your call. Don't disappoint her, or me. The board filed out, leaving Henry alone in the vast room. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his reflection staring back at him. 30 days until his life became a transaction. 30 days until he lost the last shred of control he had over his own existence. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant, Claire. The candidate you wanted background on, Emma Scott. She rejected our offer. Again. Should I move to the next applicant? Henry frowned. Emma Scott, the woman who had turned down a $250,000 salary to be his executive assistant. Twice. No one rejected offers from Titan Holdings. No one. He pulled up her file on his tablet, 28 years old, MBA from a mid-tier state school, brilliant recommendations, and a father whose name made Henry's stomach twist with recognition. Marcus Scott, owner of Scott & Associates, a small consulting firm that Titan Holdings had acquired 7 years ago. Acquired was too kind a word. They had gutted it, absorbed its assets, and left Marcus with nothing. Henry had been 23 then, fresh out of business school, eager to prove himself to the board. He had voted against the acquisition, argued for a partnership instead. Richard had overruled him, and the board had followed Richard's lead like they always did. Marcus Scott died 2 years later. Heart attack, the report said. But Henry knew better. The man had died of a broken spirit, and now his daughter had just taken a job at one of Titan's subsidiaries, not as an executive, as a personal assistant. Henry's instincts screamed warning. Either she didn't know who had destroyed her father's company, or she knew exactly who, and she was playing a very dangerous game. He needed to find out which. He texted Claire back. I need a driver's uniform, size large. And book me a sedan, something ordinary, nothing flashy. 3 dots appeared. Then, sir, just do it, and pull all the information you have on Emma Scott's new position. I want to know everything. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's continue. 2 days later, Henry stood outside a modest apartment building in a neighborhood that smelled like coffee and exhaust fumes. He wore a simple black suit, the kind a corporate driver would wear, and his usual $500 haircut had been styled down to look unremarkable. He checked his reflection in the car's side mirror. Good enough. His phone buzzed. Claire again. Her apartment is 4B. She should be down in 5 minutes. Are you sure about this, sir? Henry didn't reply. He pocketed his phone and leaned against the sedan, a 10-year-old Toyota that felt like an insult after years of custom Bentleys and Maseratis. The building door opened, and Emma Scott stepped out. Henry's breath caught. She wasn't what he expected. The photo in her file had shown a professional woman with her hair pulled back, wearing a bland business suit. But in person, she was something else entirely. She moved with purpose, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders, her expression guarded but focused. She wore simple clothes, jeans, and a blazer, but she carried herself like someone who had fought for every inch of space she occupied in the world. She walked straight toward the car, her eyes scanning him with casual indifference. "You're the driver?" she asked, her tone clipped. Daniel, Henry said, extending his hand. He had practiced the name a dozen times in the mirror that morning, making sure it sounded natural. Daniel Ross. She shook his hand briefly, her grip firm. Emma, you're early. Traffic was light. Lucky me. She opened the back door herself before he could move to do it for her. Let's go. I have a meeting at 8:30 and I can't be late. Henry slid into the driver's seat, adjusting the rearview mirror. In it, he watched her pull out a laptop, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. She didn't look up, didn't make small talk, just worked. He started the car and pulled into traffic, his mind racing. She didn't recognize him, that much was clear. But the way she held herself, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes had scanned him like she was cataloging every detail, this was a woman on a mission. So, he said, keeping his voice casual, first day at the new job? Third, she said without looking up. And I don't do small talk. Got it. Silence filled the car. Henry focused on the road, but every few seconds his eyes drifted to the mirror. She was reading something, her expression darkening with each line. He caught a glimpse of the screen. A company memo. Something about cost-cutting measures. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. Everything okay? He asked. She looked up, meeting his eyes in the mirror. For a moment, he thought she might tell him to mind his own business. But then she sighed, closing the laptop. You ever work for people who think they own the world? She asked. Henry's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Once or twice. Then you know how exhausting it is. She leaned back, rubbing her temples. They make decisions that ruin lives, then sleep like babies because they never have to see the damage up close. Sounds like you've got a story, he said carefully. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't we all? He wanted to ask more, to dig deeper, but he held back. Pushed too hard and she'd shut down. He had to be patient. They reached the office building, a sleek glass tower in the financial district. Emma gathered her things, then paused before opening the door. Thanks for the ride, Daniel, she said, her tone softer. And sorry for being short earlier. It's been a rough week. No problem, Henry said. I'll be here when you're done. She nodded and disappeared into the building. Henry sat in the car, his heart pounding. He had expected anger, maybe even hatred, but what he had seen in her eyes was something more complicated. Determination, pain, a fire that hadn't been extinguished, just banked, waiting for the right moment to flare. He pulled out his phone and texted Claire. I need everything. Her schedule, her habits, who she talks to, everything. The reply came instantly. Sir, this is starting to feel like stalking. Henry stared at the message. Claire wasn't wrong. But he had 30 days to figure out if Emma Scott was a threat, an innocent victim, or something in between. And he had 30 days to decide whether he was going to let Richard Ashford control the rest of his life. He deleted the message and put the phone away. 30 days. The clock was already ticking. 3 weeks passed like a slow-burning fuse. Every morning, Henry picked Emma up at 7:30 sharp. Every evening, he drove her home, sometimes as late as 9 or 10 at night. And with each passing day, the walls between them crumbled a little more. She started talking. Not much at first, just small observations. A complaint about her boss, a comment about the weather, a sarcastic remark about corporate culture. But gradually, the conversations deepened. She told him about her dreams of starting her own consulting firm, about wanting to help small businesses survive in a world designed to crush them. She talked about fairness, about justice, about people who took without ever giving back. And Henry listened, really listened, because every word she spoke felt like a mirror held up to his own life, reflecting back all the compromises he had made, all the souls he had traded for success. You're a good listener, Daniel, she said one evening as they sat in traffic. Most people just wait for their turn to talk, but you actually hear what I'm saying. Maybe I just don't have much to say, he replied, keeping his eyes on the road. I doubt that. She studied him in the rearview mirror. You're educated, I can tell by the way you use words. You didn't grow up planning to be a driver. His hands tightened on the wheel. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Tell me about it. She looked out the window at the gridlocked city. My father used to say that the world breaks everyone eventually, but the strong ones, they put themselves back together. They just look different afterward. Your father sounds wise, Henry said quietly. He was. Her voice cracked slightly. He died 6 years ago. Heart attack. At least that's what the death certificate said. Henry's chest constricted. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't kill him. She laughed bitterly. Westa. Titan Holdings did that all on their own. The car fell silent. Henry wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to explain that he had fought against the acquisition, that he had tried to save her father's company. But the words stuck in his throat, trapped behind the wall of lies he had built. You hate them, he said instead. Titan Holdings. With every fiber of my being. She met his eyes in the mirror, and the intensity there nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. They're vultures. They circle struggling companies, pick them apart, and leave nothing but bones. My father built his business from nothing, 20 years of his life, and they destroyed it in 6 months. Then why are you working for them? The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma's expression shifted, became guarded again. Because I need to understand how they think, how they operate. You can't fight an enemy you don't understand. So you're gathering intelligence, Henry said carefully. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something like that. He should have been alarmed, should have reported back to Claire, initiated damage control, protected the company. But instead, all he felt was a strange sense of pride. She was a fighter, a survivor, everything the people in his world had forgotten how to be. Be careful, he said. People like that, they don't play fair. Neither do I. She closed her laptop and leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something, Daniel? Sure. Why are you really driving me around? You're overqualified for this job. I've seen the way you analyze traffic patterns, the way you read people. You're wasted behind a steering wheel. Henry's mind raced. He had prepared for many questions, but not this one. Not her seeing through him so clearly. Maybe I needed a change, he said. Maybe I got tired of the corporate ladder and wanted something simpler. Or maybe you're hiding from something. Her eyes locked onto his in the mirror. Or someone. Before he could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. I need to take this. She answered, her tone shifting to professional. Emma Scott speaking. Henry drove in silence, but he couldn't help overhearing her side of the conversation. Yes, I have the quarterly reports ready. No, sir. I don't think that's a good idea. Those cuts would affect over 200 employees. There has to be another way. A pause. Her jaw clenched. I understand that profit margins are important, but these are people's lives. Their families depend on these jobs. Another pause. Longer this time. Yes, sir. I'll have it on your desk by morning. She hung up, and Henry saw her hands trembling slightly. You okay? He asked. They're laying off a quarter of the workforce, she said, her voice hollow. 237 people, and my boss just asked me to draft the termination letters. Can you refuse? And lose my job? She laughed bitterly. No, I have to do it. I have to be the one who types up the words that destroy people's lives, just like someone typed up the words that destroyed my father's. Henry pulled the car over to the side of the road. He turned in his seat to face her fully. Then don't, he said. What? Don't do it. Walk away. You said it yourself? You hate working for them. So stop. And do what? I have rent. I have bills. The world doesn't run on principles, Daniel. It runs on money. Then let me help you, he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. I have some savings. It's not much, but it could cover your expenses for a few months while you figure out your next move. She stared at him like he had grown a second head. You barely know me. Why would you do that? Because I owe your father everything, Thay. Because I'm the reason he lost his company. Because every time I look at you, I see the kind of person I should have been. Because someone should, he said simply. Tears welled in her eyes. She blinked them back furiously, but one escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. I can't accept your money, she whispered. But thank you for seeing me, for listening. Most people don't. He wanted to reach back, to wipe away that tear, to pull her close and promise that he would fix everything. But he couldn't, because he was the problem. He was the lie. He was the enemy she had sworn to fight. You deserve better than this, he said, his voice rough with emotion. So do you, she replied. They sat there in the fading light, two broken people pretending to be whole, separated by the front seat, and 1,000 secrets neither could afford to tell. Finally, Emma took a shaky breath and composed herself. We should go. I have those letters to write. Henry turned back around and merged into traffic. But something had shifted between them. The air felt heavier, charged with unspoken words and impossible possibilities. When he dropped her off that night, she paused before getting out of the car. "Daniel?" "Yeah? If things were different, if we had met under different circumstances, I think we could have been friends." "We still can be," he said. She smiled sadly. "I don't think so. People like us, we carry too much damage. Friendship requires trust, and I'm not sure I remember how to do that anymore." She closed the door and walked into her building without looking back. Henry sat in the car for a long time after she disappeared. His phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. "Dinner tomorrow? Father wants to discuss wedding details. He's already picked out a venue." Henry deleted the message without responding. 7 days. He had 7 days left before Richard's ultimatum expired. 7 days to choose between power and principle, between security and authenticity, between the life he had built and the person he wanted to become. He looked up at Emma's apartment window. The lights were on, and he could see her silhouette moving behind the curtains. 7 days to figure out if love was worth losing everything for. The next morning, Henry woke up to 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages, all from Claire, all marked urgent. He called her back immediately. "Sir, we have a problem," she said, her voice tight with panic. "Richard Ashford knows." Ethan's blood went cold. "Knows what?" "About the disguise, about you driving Emma Scott. He has photos, sir. He's been having you followed." "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe more. He called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's planning to use this against you. Henry closed his eyes. Of course Richard knew. The man didn't get to where he was by being careless. He had probably known from the beginning, had probably let Henry dig his own grave just to have leverage when he needed it most. "What does he want?" Henry asked, though he already knew the answer. "Your signature on the marriage contract, tonight. Or he goes public with the photos tomorrow and frames it as stalking. He'll destroy both your reputation and Emma's in the process." Henry's mind raced through scenarios, looking for exits, finding none. Richard had checkmated him perfectly. "Tell him I'll be there at 8, Henry said. "Sir, there has to be another way." "There isn't." He hung up before she could argue further. He had one more day with Emma. One more day before Richard burned everything to the ground. One more day to decide if he was going to fight or surrender. He picked up his phone and called Emma. "Daniel?" She sounded surprised. "Is everything okay?" "I need to see you," he said. "Tonight, not as your driver, just as me. Can you meet me somewhere?" A long pause. "What's going on?" "Please, Emma, I'll explain everything, but I need you to trust me one more time." Another pause, even longer. "Then, there's a coffee shop on 5th and Main, 8 o'clock, but Daniel, if this is some kind of game, it's not, I promise." He hung up and stared at his reflection in the bedroom mirror. Tonight, he would tell her everything. Tonight, he would stop being Daniel Ross and face her as Henry Cross. Tonight, he would give her the truth, even if it meant she would hate him forever. Because 7 days had become 7 hours, and time had finally run out. Henry never made it to the coffee shop. At 7:15, his phone rang. Claire's name flashed on the screen. "Sir, Richard moved up the timeline. He's calling a press conference. Right now. At the Plaza Hotel. Victoria's already there, and he's telling reporters you're announcing your engagement tonight." "Stall him," Henry said, already grabbing his keys. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "He won't wait, sir. He's doing this deliberately. He wants you to look like you're running away." Henry's jaw clenched. Richard was forcing his hand, backing him into a corner with no escape. If he didn't show up, Richard would spin it as abandonment. If he did show up, he'd be trapped on stage with cameras rolling and no way out. He texted Emma. "Something came up. Emergency. I'm sorry. I'll explain soon. I promise." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. Henry drove to the plaza like a man heading to his own execution. The hotel lobby was packed with reporters, cameras, and society photographers. Victoria stood near the grand staircase in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. She looked beautiful and utterly miserable. Richard spotted Henry immediately and strode over, his smile sharp as broken glass. "There you are, son. We were starting to worry." He gripped Henry's arm, his fingers digging in like talons. "Victoria's been waiting. The press is ready. All you have to do is smile, hold her hand, and say yes when I make the announcement." "I need to talk to you," Henry said quietly. "Privately. Later. Right now, we have an image to project. Richard guided him toward the staircase where Victoria waited. She met Henry's eyes, and he saw something unexpected there. Not hope. Not love. Just resignation. "I'm sorry," she mouthed silently. Just as Richard positioned them like chess pieces, Henry on one side, Victoria on the other, himself in the center. The cameras flashed like lightning. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice," Richard began, his voice booming with practiced authority. "Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce the engagement of my daughter, Victoria Ashford, to Henry Cross, CEO of Titan Holdings. This union represents not just a marriage, but a merger of two families committed to excellence, innovation, and the future of American business." Applause rippled through the crowd. Henry felt Victoria's hand slip into his. Her palm was cold and clammy. "Henry would like to say a few words," Richard continued, stepping aside with a triumphant smile. This was it, the moment of surrender. All Henry had to do was read the script Richard had prepared, smile for the cameras, and his future would be secure. His position protected, his power intact. He looked out at the sea of faces and cameras, and then in the back of the room near the exit, he saw her. Emma. She stood frozen, her face pale, her eyes locked on him with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. She must have seen the news alert, must have come to find out if it was true. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Henry watched something die in her expression. Understanding crashed over her features like a wave. She knew, not everything, but enough to realize that Daniel Ross didn't exist, that the man she had trusted, confided in, almost cared for, was a lie. She turned and walked toward the exit. Henry made his decision. "I can't do this," he said into the microphone. The room went silent. Richard's smile froze. "Henry," Victoria whispered urgently, "don't." "I'm sorry, Victoria. I'm sorry to do this to you in front of all these people, but I can't marry you. I don't love you, and you don't love me. We both deserve better than a transaction disguised as a marriage." Gasps and murmurs erupted. Cameras swiveled toward Richard, whose face had gone purple with rage. "Henry, step away from that microphone right now," Richard hissed. But Henry kept talking, his voice steady and clear. "I've spent my entire adult life building an empire, making compromises, sacrificing pieces of myself for success. But recently, someone taught me that integrity isn't about power. It's about showing up as who you really are, even when it costs you everything." He looked toward where Emma had been standing, but she was gone. "I pretended to be someone I wasn't because I was afraid the real me wasn't enough. I was wrong. And I hurt someone because of it. Someone who deserved honesty, not manipulation. Someone who taught me what courage actually looks like." Richard grabbed his arm. "That's enough." Henry pulled away. "No, it's not nearly enough, but it's a start." He turned to Victoria. "I'm sorry. Truly. You deserve someone who sees you, not your last name or your father's shares." Victoria's eyes glistened with tears, but she nodded. "Go," she whispered. "Go find her." Henry left the microphone and pushed through the crowd. Behind him, Richard was shouting something about breach of contract and board votes, but Henry didn't care anymore. He had spent 7 years building Titan Holdings. If he lost it today, so be it. He burst out of the hotel into the cool night air, scanning the street frantically. There, half a block away, walking fast, her shoulders rigid with anger and hurt. "Emma," he shouted, running after her. "Emma, wait!" She spun around, and the look on her face nearly stopped him in his tracks. Fury and betrayal warred in her eyes, making them shine dangerously bright. "Don't," she said, her voice shaking. "Don't you dare come near me. Please, just let me explain." "Explain?" She laughed, harsh and bitter. "Explain what, exactly? That you're Henry Cross? That you've been lying to me for 3 weeks? That you pretended to be my driver while you were actually the man responsible for destroying my father's life?" "I tried to save your father's company," Henry said desperately. "I voted against the acquisition. I argued with the board, but Richard overruled me. I was 23. I had no power, no influence. So you decided to play dress-up and spy on me instead?" Her voice cracked. "Was it entertaining, watching me pour my heart out to you? Did you laugh off about it with your assistant? With your board members?" "No. God, no, Emma. I wanted to understand why you turned down my job offer, and then I found out who you were, who your father was, and I realized you might be there for revenge. I needed to know if you were dangerous." So you lied. You invaded my privacy. You let me trust you when you knew exactly who I was and what your company had done to my family. Tears streamed down her face now, but her voice remained steady and cold. Do you have any idea what it's like to finally feel safe with someone, to finally let your guard down, only to discover it was all fake? All calculated? It wasn't fake, Henry said, stepping closer. The way I felt, the things I said to you, that was real. More real than anything in my life has been for years. You don't get to do that. She backed away from him. You don't get to lie to someone for weeks and then claim your feelings were real. Real feelings require honesty, Henry. They require trust. And you destroyed any chance of that the moment you decided to play your sick little game. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I know I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Emma. But please, just listen. I did listen, she interrupted. For 3 weeks, I listened to Daniel Ross, a kind man, an honest man, a man who actually gave a damn about something other than profit margins and power plays. But Daniel Ross doesn't exist, does he? He was just another lie you told to get what you wanted. What I wanted was to know you, Henry said. The real you. Not the version you would have shown Henry Cross, CEO of Titan Holdings. I wanted to meet you without all the walls and expectations and baggage. No, Emma said firmly. You wanted to control the situation. You wanted to assess the threat I posed to your precious company. And when you realized I wasn't dangerous, you decided to keep playing because it made you feel good about yourself. It made you feel real. She was right about all of it. And Henry had no defense, no justification that could make this better. I'm sorry, he said again, helplessly. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry about your father and everything my company took from you. I'm sorry for all of it. Emma wiped her eyes roughly. You want to know the worst part? I was starting to fall for you. For Daniel. For the man I thought you were. And now I have to live with the fact that I was stupid enough to trust someone again. That I let myself be vulnerable with the man who killed my father. I didn't kill him, Henry whispered. Yes, you did. Maybe you didn't sign the final papers. Maybe you voted against it, but you were part of that world. You are part of that world. And people like you don't see the bodies you leave behind because you're too busy counting your money and congratulating yourselves for being smart enough to win. She turned away. Don't follow me. Don't call me. Don't ever pretend to be someone you're not again just to get close to me. We're done, Henry. We were done before we even started. She walked away, and this time, Henry didn't follow. He stood on the empty street, his heart shattered, watching her disappear into the night. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Victoria appeared, still in her cream dress, a coat thrown over her shoulders. That went well, she said dryly. Henry couldn't even manage a bitter laugh. Your father's going to destroy me. Probably. She stood beside him, following his gaze down the empty street. Was it worth it? I don't know, Henry admitted. I just blew up my entire life for a woman who hates me. She doesn't hate you, Victoria said quietly. She hates that she cared about you. There's a difference. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Victoria sighed. For what it's worth, I'm glad you told the truth up there, even if it humiliated both of us in front of half the city. I'm sorry, Victoria. You deserved better than that. Yes, I did. But I also deserved better than a loveless marriage orchestrated by my father for share points. She smiled sadly. Maybe we both just got set free. 6 weeks later, Henry stood in an empty boardroom, boxing up the last of his personal items. Richard had made good on his threats. The board vote had been swift and brutal. Henry was out as CEO, his shares diluted, his reputation in tatters. The press had eaten up the story of the billionaire who pretended to be a driver, spinning it as everything from romantic desperation to calculated stalking, depending on which outlet you read. Titan Holdings would survive without him. It always did. Richard had already installed his own puppet CEO, someone who would rubber stamp every decision without question. But Henry had kept one card close to his chest. Before the vote, he had transferred a significant portion of his liquid assets into a trust, not for himself, for something that mattered more. Claire knocked on the door. Sir, the car's ready, and this came for you. She handed him a folder. Inside were documents establishing the Marcus Scott Memorial Fund for Small Business Recovery, $50 million dedicated to helping entrepreneurs rebuild after corporate acquisitions. The first grant had already been approved. Recipient, Emma Scott Consulting. Did she accept it? Henry asked. Claire shook her head. She tried to refuse, said she didn't want your charity or your guilt money. I had to explain 3 times that it was a legitimate grant with a blind review process. She still thinks it's suspicious. But she took it. Eventually. Her landlord was about to evict her. Claire paused. She's doing well, sir. Her first 3 clients are all small businesses that got squeezed by larger competitors. She's fighting the good fight. Henry smiled despite the ache in his chest. Good, that's good. He picked up his box and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed on the office that had defined his adult life, he felt something unexpected. Not grief. Not regret. Relief. 3 weeks later, the Titan Holdings annual charity gala arrived. Henry had debated attending. He was no longer CEO, no longer on the board, no longer part of that world. But the invitation had come anyway, probably Richard's way of rubbing salt in the wound. Henry decided to go. Not for Richard. For himself. He arrived late, slipping in through a side entrance to avoid the press clustered at the front. The ballroom was packed with the city's elite, all champagne glasses and false laughter and designer gowns. On stage, Richard was giving his annual speech about philanthropy and corporate responsibility. The irony was so thick, Henry could taste it. And then he saw her. Emma stood near the back of the room, partially hidden behind a marble column. She wore a simple black dress, kind of her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable as she watched Richard pontificate. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and Henry's heart stopped. She didn't run, didn't look away, just held his gaze with those dark, unflinching eyes. On stage, Richard was wrapping up. And now I'd like to invite our former CEO, Henry Cross, to say a few words about the transition and the exciting future ahead for Titan Holdings. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Richard was twisting the knife, forcing Henry to publicly endorse his own removal. Henry walked to the stage, very aware of hundreds of eyes tracking his movement. He took the microphone and for a moment just stood there, looking out at the sea of faces. Then his gaze found Emma again. I was supposed to talk about the future of Titan Holdings, he began, about seamless transitions and continued excellence, but I'm not going to do that. Richard shifted uncomfortably beside him. Instead, I want to talk about truth, about the cost of lies and the price of power. Ethan's voice was steady, clear. 7 years ago, this company destroyed a small consulting firm called Scott & Associates. The owner, Marcus Scott, lost everything. His business, his savings, his health. He died 2 years later. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Cameras started flashing. I was 23 at the time. I voted against the acquisition. I argued that we should partner with them instead, help them grow. But I was overruled by senior board members who saw only profit, not people. Richard stepped forward. Henry, this is neither the time nor the place. Actually, it's exactly the time and place. Henry looked directly at Richard. Because for 7 years, I've carried the guilt of that decision. I've told myself I was powerless, that I did what I could. But the truth is, I stayed silent. I benefited from the destruction of that man's life. I built my career on the broken backs of people like Marcus Scott. He turned back to the crowd. Recently, I met Marcus Scott's daughter, Emma. She's building her own consulting firm now, dedicated to helping small businesses survive against corporate predators. She's everything her father was, principled, courageous, uncompromising. He found her face in the crowd again. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I lied to her. I pretended to be someone else because I was afraid the real me wasn't good enough, and I was right to be afraid because the real me was a coward who chose comfort over conscience. Richard tried to take the microphone. That's enough. Victoria stood up from her seat at the VIP table. No, father, let him finish. Richard stared at his daughter in shock. The entire ballroom held its breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Henry continued. I don't deserve it. But I am asking all of you to remember that behind every acquisition, every quarterly report, every profit margin, there are human beings, people with families and dreams and lives that matter just as much as shareholder returns. He set the microphone down and walked off the stage. Richard's face was purple with rage, but he couldn't make a scene now, not with cameras broadcasting live to thousands of viewers. Henry pushed through the crowd, heading for the exit. He had said what he needed to say. Now he just wanted to disappear. Ethan, he turned. Emma stood 5 feet away, her mascara smudged, her eyes red but fierce. You had no right, she said, her voice shaking. No right to put my father's name out there like that. No right to turn his death into your redemption story. You're right, Henry said quietly. I'm sorry. I just wanted people to know the truth, to know what your father built, what he meant. I know what he meant, she interrupted. I don't need you to tell the world. I don't need you to ease your guilt by playing martyr on stage. They stood there, 2 broken people in a room full of strangers, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Then Emma pulled something from her purse. A folder. I found these, she said, thrusting it at him. Board minutes from 7 years ago. You were telling the truth. You did vote against the acquisition. You fought for my father. Henry took the folder with trembling hands. Where did you get this? I have my sources. She wiped her eyes roughly. I've spent 6 weeks hating you, convinced you were just another corporate monster hiding behind a nice smile. But then I dug deeper, and I found meeting notes, emails, records of every time you argued against aggressive acquisitions, every time you lost. I still lost, Henry said hollowly. That's what matters. No. Her voice softened slightly. What matters is that you tried. You were 23 years old, fresh out of school, and you stood up to a room full of people who could crush you. That takes courage. It didn't save your father. No, it didn't. She met his eyes. But maybe it saves someone else's father someday. Maybe that's enough. Henry felt something crack open in his chest. I don't know how to make this right, Emma. I don't know how to fix what I broke. You can't fix it, she said simply. My father is gone. That's not something you can undo with money or grand gestures or public confessions. But maybe, she paused, struggling with the words, maybe you can honor his memory by being the person you pretended to be. Daniel Ross, the man who listened, who cared, who saw people as more than profit margins. Daniel Ross doesn't exist, Henry whispered. Then make him exist. She stepped closer. Be the man I thought I was falling for, not because you're trying to earn forgiveness, but because it's who you actually want to be. Before Henry could respond, Richard's voice boomed across the ballroom. Security, remove that woman immediately. She's trespassing. Emma stiffened. I should go. Wait, Henry grabbed her hand without thinking. Come with me, please. Where? Anywhere, nowhere. I don't care. His voice was desperate now. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you, but I'm asking anyway, because I'm done pretending. I'm done hiding. I want to be the man you thought I was, but I can't do it alone. Emma looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. If I say yes, if I give you this chance, you have to promise me something. Anything. No more lies. No more games. No more testing me to see if I'm good enough or real enough or whatever other metric you're using. You show up honest, or you don't show up at all. I promise, Henry said. I swear to you, Emma. No more lies. She searched his face for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Security guards were pushing through the crowd now, heading their way. We should probably run, Emma said, a tiny smile tugging at her lips. Henry grinned. After you. They ran. Out of the ballroom, through the hotel lobby, past shocked valets and confused guests, into the cool night air. They didn't stop until they reached the parking garage, breathless and laughing like teenagers escaping detention. I can't believe we just did that, Emma gasped, leaning against a concrete pillar. I can't believe you're still talking to me, Henry admitted. She straightened, her expression turning serious. I'm not promising anything, Henry. I'm not promising I'll forgive you, or that this will work, or that we'll end up together. I'm just promising I'll try, one day at a time. That's all I'm asking. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, Take me home, Daniel. His heart stopped. What? You heard me. Take me home. Not to my apartment. Just drive, like you used to. Let's see if we can find our way back to who we were before everything got complicated. Henry led her to his car. Not a fancy sports car or a luxury sedan. The same old Toyota he had driven as her driver, the one he had kept after everything fell apart. He opened the passenger door for her. Not the back seat? No, she said, sliding in beside him. We're done with that. From now on, we sit side by side, equal partners or nothing at all. Equal partners, Henry agreed. He started the car and pulled out of the garage. They drove through the city in comfortable silence, the lights blurring past the windows like stars. Finally, Emma said, "Pull over." "What?" "Pull over." "Now." He did, confused. They were on an empty street, warehouses on one side, the river on the other. Emma turned to face him fully. "I need you to know something. I've been lying too." Henry's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I knew who you were," she said softly. "Not at first, but after about 2 weeks. I found your wallet in the glove compartment. I saw your ID, your credit cards. I knew Daniel Ross was fake." Henry stared at her, shock rendering him speechless. "I told myself I was gathering evidence," she continued, "that I was playing you the way you were playing me. But the truth is, I kept quiet because I liked Daniel. I liked the version of you that didn't have the weight of an empire on his shoulders. I liked talking to you, being around you, and I was terrified that if I confronted you, it would all disappear." "So we were both lying," Henry said slowly. "We were both protecting ourselves," Emma corrected. "We were both so scared of being hurt that we hurt each other instead." "Then where do we go from here?" Emma smiled, and for the first time since that terrible night at the plaza, it reached her eyes. "We start over. Clean slate, no lies, no games, no pretending." She held out her hand formally. "Hi, I'm Emma Scott. I run a small consulting firm. I hate corporate greed, and I'm terrible at trusting people." Henry took her hand, warmth flooding through him. "Hi, I'm Henry Cross. I used to run a company that destroyed people's lives. I'm trying to be better, and I'm falling in love with you." Emma's breath caught. That's a lot for a first introduction." "You said no more lies," Henry replied, "so I'm telling you the truth, all of it. I'm falling in love with you, Emma. Maybe I have been since the first day you told me you don't do small talk." She laughed, and it sounded like forgiveness. "You're an idiot." "I know. And you hurt me." "I know. And this is probably the worst idea either of us has ever had." "Probably." She leaned across the center console. "Shut up and kiss me." He did. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, two people learning to trust again. But then it deepened, became something urgent and real and impossible to deny. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "I'm still angry with you," Emma whispered. "I know. And it's going to take time for me to fully trust you again. I'll wait as long as it takes. And if you ever lie to me again, I won't. I swear, Emma, no more lies. Not ever." She pulled back slightly, studying his face. Then she smiled. "Okay, let's try this, but we do it right. Dinner, real dates, getting to know each other as who we actually are, not who we pretended to be." "I'd like that," Henry said. "And Ethan?" "Yeah, next time let me drive." He laughed, and it felt like breathing again after being underwater too long. "Deal." They drove through the city until dawn painted the sky pink and gold, talking about everything and nothing, building something new from the wreckage of their lies. And when Henry finally dropped Emma off at her apartment, she kissed him once more at her door. Soft and sweet and full of possibility. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being brave enough to tell the truth, even when it cost you everything." "You're worth everything," Henry said. She smiled and disappeared inside. Henry drove home as the sun rose over the city. He had lost his company, his reputation, his fortune, but somehow, impossibly, he felt richer than he ever had before. Because for the first time in his life, Henry Cross was exactly who he claimed to be. No masks, no pretense. Just a man trying to be worthy of a woman who had taught him that love without honesty was just another transaction. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more emotional stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us, would you give someone a second chance after they lied to you? And if you believe in love and second chances, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story today. Thanks for watching, friends.